This week, we are going to look at three historical books that share the life of Judah after the people went into captivity. Getting an overview of the events of this time will help you understand these writings. Let's learn about the world powers that God permitted to capture his chosen people. The first of these world powers was Assyria. The map shows you where this nation was located, the land known as Iraq today. The first mention of Assyria in the Bible is found in Genesis 10:11, where we are told that Nimrod developed it and built Nineveh as well as other cities. In 2 Kings 15, we are told that Pul, king of Assyria, was used by God to punish Israel for their wickedness. Menahem gave him 1,000 talents of silver to gain his support and strengthen his own hold on the kingdom. At that time, every wealthy man had to contribute 50 shekels of silver to be given to Pul as a bribe to get him out of the land. The Assyrians were known for their fierceness, torturing and skinning prisoners alive. In the time of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, deported them to Assyria. Later, King Ahaz sent messengers to say to him, "I am your servant and vassal. Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Aram and of the king of Israel who are attacking me." Well, Ahaz took the silver and gold found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasuries of the royal palace, and sent it as a gift to the king of Assyria. The king of Assyria complied by attacking Damascus and capturing it. Then in the 9th year of Hoshea, Assyria captured Samaria and deported the Israelites. They were settled along the Neighbour River and in the towns of the Medes. As was the custom of this nation, the king also moved people from Babylon and other towns and resettled them in Samaria to replace the Israelites. A second great world power, the Chaldeans, emerged and replaced Assyria as the greatest power in the region. This group came out of the area we now know as Kuwait and the part of Iraq which joins it. Babylon was its capital city and is still known as one of the 8 wonders of the world. Often the Chaldeans are called the Babylonians because of their majesty of the capital city. Note the explanation given here that this empire had its beginnings at the Tower of Babel. For over 200 years, Babylon and Assyria struggled for supremacy. Finally, Babylon took control of the region, and the southern kingdom Judah was taken captive by them. On this page, we see that the Persian Empire defeated the Chaldeans. Thus, the area we now know as Iran became the world power. The Persians were humane people. They sympathized with the plight of the Jews who had been removed from Jerusalem and Judah and repatriated the displaced people. For 200 years, Judah was a small province of Persia. This brings us to the books we're going to study this week. King Cyrus was the man who gave the decree for Judah's citizens to return to the land. Ezra and Nehemiah were a part of the first immigrants to return. Take a moment and read Ezra 1 through 4 to get a background for our study. Ralph Neighbour here. May Christ be revealed in every step you take. As my Chinese friends say when parting, 再见, 再见. Today we're going to learn about Ezra. This is the man God used to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem after the captivity of Judah came to an end. He was a direct descendant of Aaron. Look at the outline. God restructured the powers of the Middle East after the Babylonians were defeated. Cyrus, king of Persia, gave his blessing to Ezra to rebuild the temple. According to Ezra 7:6, he was a teacher well versed in the law of Moses, which the Lord, the God of Israel, had given. The king had granted him everything he asked for. The hand of the Lord his God was on him. A journey of 5 months was required to go from Babylon to Jerusalem. When he arrived, his long study of the law of the Lord well suited him for his task. He appointed magistrates and judges to administer justice and became the central figure in Jerusalem. The first wave of exiles were all related to the temple ministry in one way or another. Those whose lineage could be traced all the way back to Aaron were used to perform the sacrifices as the altar of burnt offerings was reinstated. There's an interesting comment made in chapter 2. Those who had lost their records but thought they were descended from Aaron had a way of finding out for sure. In verse 63 we read, "The governor ordered them not to eat any of the most sacred food until there was a priest ministering with the Urim and Thummim." Now, this refers to the breastplate of the high priest. It had 2 stones set in it, called Urim and Thummim. One glowed if the answer to a question was yes, the other glowed if the answer was no. When only God knew the true answer to a question, this was the way the answer was secured from him. In our day, pagan rituals use the tossing of blocks of wood or similar means to get information about things unknown. This is Satan's counterfeit of the Urim and Thummim. The important thing to realize here is that the agent of the stone was more important than the stones themselves. It was the person wearing the stones that caused God to answer the question. We must apply this to the use of spiritual gifts today. In the Bible, the significance is never on possessing the gifts of the Spirit, but the ministry which flows from the life of the individual who is used by God. Well, the rebuilding of the temple begins in earnest after the sacrifices, and soon opposition arises. Letters are sent to Artaxerxes, who is now the Persian king, warning him that Jerusalem has been a problem in the past and the Jews should be stopped. He orders the work on the temple to cease. But then we are introduced in chapter 5 of Ezra to 2 prophets, Haggai and Zechariah. Later, we will review their books, so remember, they were contemporaries of Ezra and Nehemiah. They have a word from the Lord that it's all right to continue with the building of the temple. When it's discovered they are doing so, once again a letter is written to the king. By this time, Darius is on the throne. He searches the records of Cyrus and discovers the Jews were given authorization to build the temple, and so it's finally finished. Read about the dedication in Ezra 6:17-22. At the same time all this is going on, Nehemiah is busy constructing a wall of Jerusalem. More about that on Thursday. Tomorrow, we're going to look at the last half of Ezra, where some powerful lessons are provided for us. Take a moment and read Ezra 3:11-13 today. Ralph Neighbour here. May Christ be revealed in every step you take. As my Chinese friends say when parting, 再见,再见. Look at the outline of Nehemiah. With this book, we close the history of this period. Nehemiah is very closely linked to the book of Ezra. It has always been attached to it in Jewish manuscripts because it gives the history and reforms of Nehemiah from 444 to about 420 BC. Nehemiah's great work of restoring the walls of Jerusalem depended on securing permission from the king. He held the important position of cupbearer to Artaxerxes I. Note in chapter 1, the first 11 verses, that Nehemiah began by praying through the problem. We need to learn this important lesson. When impossible problems face us, as did this problem faced by Nehemiah, the first place we must go is to the throne of God. There and only there will the solutions come. Adversaries from Satan and his fallen angels may seek to stop our prayers from being answered, but prevailing prayer always will bring an answer from heaven. Through the decree of this powerful Babylonian ruler, Nehemiah was appointed governor of Judea, giving him the power to rebuild the area. Earlier, Ezra had returned to Jerusalem, but he had been hindered in his work by adverse royal decrees secured by his enemies. In God's providence, Nehemiah secured the restoration of royal favor. The actual building of the wall was parceled out among different leaders. Although Nehemiah encountered opposition from Sanballat, the wall was successfully completed. Nehemiah's reform involved the teaching of Moses' law by Ezra and others at a special Feast of Tabernacles. This led to the great prayer of confession of Nehemiah 9. You will find some of the passages in this chapter to be very meaningful as you personally worship and praise your Lord. For example, beginning in verse 5, we read, "Stand up and praise the Lord your God, who is from everlasting to everlasting. Blessed be your glorious name, and may it be exalted above all. Blessing and praise. You alone are the Lord. You made the heavens, even the highest heavens, and all their starry host, the earth and all that is on it, the seas and all that is in them. You give life to everything, and the multitudes of heaven worship you." Oh, spend some time in this valuable chapter. You will find yourself underlining verse after verse to remind you of its power and meaning when you return to read this book. Ralph Neighbour here. May Christ be revealed in every step you take. As my Chinese friends say when parting, 再见,再见. Today we want to get even better acquainted with the period of time which surrounds the return of Judah to the ruins of Jerusalem and the two important men God used in that period of time, Ezra and Nehemiah. As mentioned previously, the books of Ezra and Nehemiah originally were regarded by Jews as a single work, and a general introduction must treat them together. And when you read the opening verses and compare them with the closing verses of 2 Chronicles, there's a definite continuation of the history of Judah. And access to a pictorial encyclopedia will help you appreciate the fine outline of the temple area. Jerusalem in this period of time was much, much smaller than modern Jerusalem, and the temple took up a great deal of the space inside the walls. The size of the walls that had to be rebuilt were therefore smaller than the walls which were later constructed. While these historical backgrounds are of interest to the Bible scholar, the real significance of these two books for us is to see the careful way they document the result of sin and the eventual restoration of the sinning people by Jehovah God. Reflect on this thought when you read these two books, for in each of our lives we come to that point sooner or later when we have to say to ourselves, I have sinned. Is there any hope for me? The truths which stand out are these. 1, when I sin, there's a price to pay. The longer the sin goes on, the greater the price for every action of sin. There is an equal reaction of judgment. In the case of Judah, their sin had caused them to come under the deepest levels of judgment. 2, sin also brings a loss of useful life, and this can extend for a long period of time. In the case of Judah, their captivity in Babylon lasted for many years. Often we do not realize as we sin that we have wasted a great deal of valuable life in the process of our disobedience. There will often follow another period of time when we are put on the shelf by God as He makes us face the consequences of our sinning. Israel lost precious years suffering needlessly as the consequences of their many years of blatant rebellion against Jehovah. It's a terrible price to pay. A man who did not believe in the security of the believer after salvation once said to a pastor who taught that important truth, if I believed like you believe, that once you become a Christian, you can never lose your salvation, I would sin all I wanted to. The other pastor replied, Sir, if you have been to the cross and have seen the awful consequences of sin, you would have already sinned all you wanted to. It's an important day in the life of a Christian when we are able to say, I have already sinned all I want to. I'm tired of my sin. I don't like what it does to me. That's the great lesson we find in Ezra and Nehemiah. Ralph Neighbour here. May Christ be revealed in every step you take. As my Chinese friends say when parting, 再见, 再见. The final book in Unit 19 we wish to review is Esther. Please look at the outline of the book. In chapter 1, Xerxes, the Persian king, holds a 7-day feast as he gets drunk. He asks his wife to display herself to his intoxicated companions. The queen refuses, and the king throws her out to search for a beautiful woman to take her place. And the Jewish orphan Esther is chosen to be the new queen. Her Hebrew name was Hadassah. Her cousin Mordecai, who was a minor official of the palace, has reared her as his own daughter. At first, Mordecai told her to conceal her Jewish ancestry, but later he warned her that she would not escape a massacre of the Jews that Haman was planning. She insisted that the Jews in the city should fast and pray for her. She then appeared before the king without being called by him, which could have meant death for her. but he received her kindly. She invited the king and Haman to dinner, where she had planned to disclose Haman's schemes. At a second dinner, she exposed Haman's plot. The king was angry and went out of the room. When he returned, he found Haman leaning over Esther, begging her for mercy, and the king thought he was trying to make love to her. Haman was taken out and hanged. Esther and Mordecai then obtained the king's permission to avert the massacre. Since the original decree could not be reversed, they authorized the Jews to defend themselves on the day of the massacre. In this way, the decree was aborted, since it was unlikely that the local authorities would risk their own necks to follow the decree of dead Haman. In Susa, where Esther lived, she asked permission for the Jews to kill their enemies on the following day as well, and on that day the Jews took their revenge. Instead of merely defending themselves, the Bible shows how God used Esther and Mordecai to deliver his people. In an emergency, it is not known how long either of them remained in power, but certainly Esther was not the mother of any subsequent heir to the Persian throne. The reading of Esther is as fascinating as a novel, but the real blessing of it for us today is to realize that God is in charge of impossible situations. The power of a mighty nation and a monarch who had total life and death control of his people is shown to be moved by God through a single frail orphan Jewess. It reminds us that we can always, in all impossible situations, expect our God to meet our needs and deliver us from oppression. He is always there for us, and we should never ever face the impossible without remembering that with God there is another word, impossible. Ralph Neighbour here. May Christ be revealed in every step you take. As my Chinese friends say when parting, 再见, 再见.